welcome. We are here filming more episodes of Retail Media Confessions. I'm Leah Logan, and I am joined today with Andrew, my esteemed colleague, and we have Molly with us today. Molly, you are from Ace Hardware?
Yes, I'm Molly Hjelm. I am the Corporate Vice President and General Manager of Red Vest Media at Ace Hardware.
Nice. Today we are going to unpack yet another spicy topic. We really want to dive into this terminology called transparency in the world of measurement. It means many things to many people, so we're going to let it get spicy. First, Molly, I would love it if you would share your retail media confession with us.
My retail media confession is that I'm addicted to the pace of change in retail media.
Oh, I like that. I think we all are.
I mean, I don't know if I could do another job in another industry. Like the idea of doing the same thing every year, or kind of cycling with the same portfolio, or even having the same advertiser or partner base. The reason that this industry is so exciting and so compelling is just that you feel like you're constantly learning, constantly on the cutting edge of the intersection of data, retail, and media. So I love that. And part of what's driven that pace of change is advertisers. Advertisers pushing retailers to behave like media companies, pushing them to adhere to the standards that are being set by pure play e-commerce retailers, whether that's standardized measurement from that pure play e-commerce retailers are kind of establishing, whether that's access to data, whether that's formats that they want them to bring forward. And so we owe so much of the evolution in this industry and the maturation of this industry to advertisers pushing for the standards basically that Amazon has been setting. But
bad word.
Oh, good. yeah. But you know, that breaks down, and I think this topic is so fruitful for us to chat through, because that really starts to break down now when our industry is at maturation, and to a greater extent we have shifted our portfolios and our measurements really to get to really move pretty far along on that spectrum. And now there should be a recognition, there isn't a recognition, but there should be this recognition that brick and mortar retailers are not going to be able to, and it's not going to make sense to hold them to standards of e-commerce retailers, because still so much of our sales happen in store. And so I know that's something that we'll be discussing today.
We're going to unpack it, and Andrew's going to kick us off with setting the stage. What's going on?
Yeah, well, you mentioned transparency, which is really a big part of the whole debate around measurement standardization, which is to say that there isn't measurement standardization across retail. And where there is, I don't think brands appreciate it. It is certainly what they believe to be the case, and it often is. Now, the way I look at it is, listen, there are some certain standard metrics that you tend to see across most retailers. I'll be the first one to say retailers should have some bespoke metrics that speak to their business. So I think there's definitely room for that as well. Not everything has to be standardized, but the basics have to be standardized. But I think what happens is that they have a metric put in front of them like ROAS, and it's this all-encompassing ROAS picture, except they don't know what it's actually speaking to most of the time, and the biggest problem there is the attribution window. Mm-hmm. They don't know if it's a 7-day, 14-day, 28-day, who knows how long it is. And so when I look at the landscape, I would say, well, there's often a reason for that, which is that retailers in different categories, there's a logic for different attribution windows. I'd like to think that there's kind of a simple solution here, which is transparency. Provide all relevant attribution windows, provide a nice little toggle in the UI so that advertisers can see what it looks like across the different reporting periods, and then it enables them, it puts the power in their hands to be able to say, okay, there's not a single universal ROAS number, but I can take this ROAS across these 4 retailers and look at the 14-day attribution window that is relevant. So I would say that's the high level of what we're seeing, but there's a lot more layers of standardization issues that we encounter too.
Are you finding in your experience that retailers are not being transparent with their attribution windows? Because in my experience, that's something they're very transparent about, but that advertisers push back on pretty significantly.
Both. I mean, I think what I most often hear is that there's, they don't provide the number unless asked. So a lot of times, if there are practitioners who are just, especially when you get agencies involved, they might just have to pull the ROAS number. So a lot of times a number gets pulled into whatever you're comparing across networks, and even across other channels like search or social, and you're not comparing the same thing at all. So it's not, listen, you can't get away without being transparent when you're pushed by a brand, but it happens, from what I've seen, a lot less than you'd think.
I think what drives me insane about that is, as much as I don't disagree that the toggle would be nice, like at the very least, like give them a toggle. But the trip missions can be fundamentally different by category. Like if someone, picks up their Tide laundry detergent in a Walmart store, there's likely a purchase cycle that would make sense to use for an attribution window. If someone buys a giant container of Tide at a CVS, like that feels like an incremental purchase. Like it feels like they were like, I'm out of laundry detergent. I'm going into the store for a quick trip. And I don't think it's fair to just compare a CVS purchase versus a Costco purchase versus a Walmart purchase all the same. Like I think there needs to be more time spent on a purchase cycle for items, and there needs to be more custom ROAS reporting.
I've worked for 3 retailers at this point in retail media, and all were very transparent about the attribution window. I actually think attribution window, of all the possible variables within retail measurement, is one of the more transparent. It's the easiest thing to point to with the rationale that a retailer might have. There are so many other rabbit holes where, especially when it comes to derived measurement and incrementality, where the lack of trust that advertisers feel really comes to the forefront, and probably for a good reason. But I'm with you, Leah, that I think you want the retailer knows their data best, they know their customer best. You want the retailer to have a firm opinion about how long you should be waiting before you cut that final wrap report on your results. And I think you're also right to talk about the nuance in that, of having a nuanced conversation and just sitting down. I'll have advertisers coming to me. We have a longer than 14-week attribution window, 14-day attribution.
52 weeks, everybody.
We have a longer than 14-day attribution window. We have a 30-day attribution window. And when we really sit down with the advertisers that are pushing us to standardize to the 14-day window, the conversation looks like, look, we've got deterministic user-level measurement that's showing when someone was exposed, and that on their very next trip to the ACE store, in-store experience, they purchased not just your brand, but the product that was featured in this ad. Do we really collectively, because we are in service of trying to grow your business at ACE and see if this is a lever that grows your business at ACE, do we really want to not count that sale as part of the attribution of this measurement simply because it didn't come within a pure play e-commerce retailer standard defined attribution window? And typically the answer is no, and they also want some other, they want to be able to cut it a couple different ways.
And that's where brands, I think, have a fair argument that they often can't, they don't have the flexibility to cut into different attribution windows. There's a one-size-fits-all ROAS number based on an attribution window that sometimes has to be applied broadly. So they can't do the comparisons that they need to. To your point about long-term value, though, this is something that I think could be to retailers' benefit. When you have different cuts of attribution windows, one of the ways that RMNs lose is by not taking credit after 28 days. And there is this long-term value that's created. So I'd like to see more granularity on the shorter windows and to 13 weeks, 26 weeks, 52 weeks.
Yeah. We don't toggle to different attribution windows, and I'm a little bit opposed to it because I would love to see the industry move towards not how much in sales did we see at that retailer in a 14-day window where we know we're cutting that attribution short based off of their purchase cycle, but based off of each retailer, what's the right attribution window for the full credit we should be giving this campaign, with full recognition that it's going to look different at CVS and Amazon than it does at ACE. And so if you're comparing a 14-day attribution window from a pure play commerce retailer and trying to compare that to 14 days at Ace, those numbers are not going to be comparable either.
I think that's, as we think about these fun confessional series, we like to go into like, so what should we do about it? And one of my, passion topics continues to be better planning. I do think that if brands and agencies want to understand what happened, you have to start with what do you want to happen and build the plan around that, so then you can go back and say, did it happen? I understand trying to go across retailers, it's difficult, but I think there's still a way, if you're going back to like marketing basics, to determine if you're trying to drive a trip, if you're trying to drive purchase frequency, like as much as this is media, and yes, it has to be, publisher standard, it's still retail media. There's still that opportunity to bring retail metrics into the fold, and I just don't think we spend enough time doing the planning stage. Andrew, you have a hot take on what to do about it?
I do.
Ooh. Is it a toggle?
I think, listen, toggle solved everything.
Toggle.
So I've always thought, listen, retailers do have good reasons for putting their thumb on the scale a certain way, because it's usually right for their category. I'm not going to tell them otherwise. Usually, listen, certain types of standardization are good, but it's still kind of a cat herding exercise to get every retailer to adhere to the exact same principles. At the end of the day, third-party measurement plays a role of standardizing in a way. Now, usually, going back to digital media days, the publisher didn't like this. Now retailers may not like it because sometimes those numbers are going to be different based on the methodology. I would say you have to be comfortable with a little bit of uncertainty there, but if a brand wants to measure with third-party measurement across the whole landscape, at least they get the level of consistency that lets them shift their allocations in a way that makes sense. So it does take a little bit of control away from the retailer, and they're not always comfortable with that or wouldn't be comfortable with it. But I think it does serve the broader purpose of giving the brand some consistency that it needs.
Molly, what are your thoughts on what should we do about this conundrum we're in?
I'm just glad that we as an industry are at a place where we can start inviting in some of the retail nuance inherent to retail media. I've said it before, I know Mark Williamson has a similar view and has been on this before, but that idea that for so long we've been pushed to be media companies, and that has to look a very certain way with very certain standards and very certain capabilities. And now we're at a place where I think we can invite in that nuance with at least that's been my experience with our advertiser partners, and be able to say, to your point, what is the primary goal here at this retailer? What is the pain point we're trying to solve?
Yeah.
And are we activating in a way that's going to solve that, and what's the right attribution window to truly measure that impact, whether it's a month or whether it's even, working with the merchants to identify whether this moved business for months and months or whether it impacted long-term loyalty. So for a long time, I think that we weren't able to get there to embrace the nuance, and I'm hopeful, very hopeful from my experience that we're starting to get there.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. I just want to stop having to use air quotes when I say transparency. That will be. Now
we're not even talking about incrementality.
Now we'll just talk about toggles.
MMMs. Like there's so many places that are just so lack transparency in this industry.
Yes, as a closing thought, I know you had some spicy thoughts on MMMs. Did you want to share those for the group?
So I had an experience a couple years back where it felt like every major advertiser had spent the better part of a year figuring out how to bring retail media into their MMMs. And so at the end of that calendar year, I was confronted by maybe 10 different MMMs across 10 different advertisers that had each taken our retail media network into account in their models. And I had so much empathy in that moment for how advertisers feel when they're confronted with all the different retail media incrementality models. Because I'm looking at them and thinking, okay, what data was taken into account here? Were you using my POS data? Were you using syndicated data? Were you using panel data for this? What was my competitor set? As you're showing me these masked indices of how I performed, what competitive set was included? Was Amazon included in there? And you're comparing it to the channel that we're in. And so it was just amusing because they all had such wildly different results on campaigns that had been successful at the retailer deterministic customer level. And ultimately, they ended up throwing a lot of that insight out, and the pendulum shifted. But it gave me a lot of empathy for where our industry is with measurement in general.
Olive branch.
This is a whole other episode that we're opening up
Yes,
here.
we
so
are working on
I'm
another
not going to dive
episode.
in. I'll just leave it with the final stat that there was research that said, from brands that said 70% of them said that their MMM does not properly account for retail media. So I don't think it's fit for purpose in today's day and age. We need to start looking at new methods.
So mic drop there from Andrew. Stay tuned because there will be an episode about MMMs. We may have to invite Molly back for more spice. But until then, watch out for Retail Media Confessions. Next episode coming soon, and keep it real.